Hello and welcome to the JackCast, the Swansea City podcast. I am Guto and with me, as usual, we have Steve and Carol. Steve, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad, like everybody else, just getting on with life in these very weird circumstances. If you've been listening to us recently, you'll know that we've, in the absence of football, been going very nostalgic, looking back at Swansea seasons gone by, looking back through the vault at some historic moments in our recent history, the last 25 years or so. Already we have touched on the John Hollands era. We, in the last episode, went through the kind of petty years and the struggle to... petty years, the petty weeks, really, and then the struggle to stay in the Football League. We left it last time with that famous day against Hull, which we agreed was a kind of real, I guess, the ultimate moment in the club of kind of one way or the other. It'll either go one way or the other, and of course, we won that match, and this episode's going to be a lot more cheerful because it's really the start of the golden era for Swansea City, where the rise through the divisions really began. We kicked on from that unforgettable day at Hull against Hull, and went on to create one of the most lovable teams in Swansea City's history, full of characters who could really play some good football. And, of course, went on to seal our first promotion on our way to the Premier League and ended off the Vetch history in absolute style. So today, me and Steve, we're just going to discuss two very enjoyable seasons. One of them is the first after that Hull match under Brian Flynn, one where we were challenging for promotion for much of that time and had a very memorable cup run. And then, of course, the following season under Kenny Jackett, we completed the job and went up famously to League One, signing off in style from the Vetch. So, Steve, we last time spoke a lot about Hull and what a massive moment that was for the club. And we spoke about how some clubs have that moment and don't really kick on. Wrexham is a perfect example for that. They of course, had that incredible day against, I think it was Boston, winning 3-1. Images from that day, absolutely fantastic. Not too dissimilar, really, to the images from the Hull game, apart from the fact that it was very sunny for Wrexham and it poured down against Hull. But, of course, they couldn't spark a resurgence. They couldn't spark that turnaround, and they eventually went down. That's not what happened with the Swans. We kicked on from that Hull game, and much of the work, of course, started in the following summer, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. I mean, obviously, it was always going to be huge to win that Hull game and make sure we stayed up, wasn't it? And then, the fact that we only had one player under contract, I think, for the next season. So, I think it's likely a lot of those players that had come to us, wouldn't have stayed. So, what the team would have looked like the next year is anybody's guess. But luckily, the players that we'd brought in on short-term deals, the majority of them tended to, sign an extension. And then, obviously, we did bring a couple in as well. So, it's fair to say that we did, improve the squad drastically. And there was certainly a feeling that we weren't going to be struggling again, wasn't there? And I think, if we have to pinpoint any signings, I think... it's got to be a certain Lee Trundle, really, hasn't it? His impact was quite big, wasn't it, to say the least?
I mean, it's one of the most revolutionary signings the club has ever made. You look at some players who... It's very rare that you get a player who just changes everything at a club. It really does. But Trundle was like that, if we're being honest. He really did change the club. He changed the playing style. He changed... the whole attitude towards football. He had a quality which you just did not see in League Two at all. And his personality, he was a superstar. He just had it all, really, at that level. He really was. I don't think anybody, he was obviously a pretty well known, having succeeded at Wrexham previously. But I don't think anybody could have anticipated when we signed him in that summer that he would have the transformative effect not just on the pitch but off the pitch as well that he did. That signing just set us up for a new era in a way that no other signing really has, I don't think. You can look all through the years at all the fantastic players we've signed, and you could look to something like Scott Sinclair, who was obviously instrumental in getting us into the Premier League. You can look at the signings Laudrup made when he came in. We've had some. I guess looking back to the 70s and 80s, the Tosh era, you're talking that kind of level, really. A player who just came in and changed everything. And anybody, if we didn't realise what we were getting in Lee Trundle, we quickly found out in the opening weeks of that season, Steve.
Yeah, we did. I mean, I knew a little bit of Trundle when he came in. I'd seen on Soccer Sunday a couple of times some of the things that he'd done. And I was, very pleasantly surprised that we managed to get him, because obviously Wrexham had won promotion, hadn't they? So, for him to stay in the same division with a team that had nearly gone out of the Football League was a big signing, really, for us. And it was a bit of a statement of intent. I mean, but as you say, I never expected it to have worked out the way it did, really. I mean, it was never particularly, a cool thing to say that you followed the Swans, but I think that changed when Trundle came in. It was that much of a difference. There was such a feel-good factor here, and like you say, I mean, I actually missed the first couple of games of that season. I was on holiday, so the 4-2 over Bury, and then the week after we beat Cheltenham 4-3, and Trundle scored a hat-trick, and I think the winner was in the last minute. So, I didn't see that, unfortunately. But then I remember the Boston game, which was next. We won 3-0, and he was just untouchable. He scored a chip from about 25 yards. I think Andy Robinson scored his first goal in that game, and that was from a 1-2 flick with Trundle. And then I remember at the end of the game, he's come over to the North Bank, giving it the fist, giving it the kiss of the badge, and you're just a bit like, oh, we've got like a player here. He's a bit of a like character as well. He seemed to love it, and it was just, I think from that moment on, really, it was just. He was the darling of the crowd, really, wasn't it? In a way that we probably haven't seen before or since.
No, just an icon, really, pure and simple. I'm like you. I was on holiday for the first two games that season, and it was the first time actually that I started reading newspapers, and it was just to keep an eye on results. I remember turning to the results page in the Mirror, and seeing Swansea beaten Bury and scored 4 goals. I was like, wow. That's unexpected. And then, like I said, the next week then 4-3. I was like, wow, what are we missing back home? What's going on? And that the goals are just flying in. I remember going to the Boston game as well, thinking, right, what have I been missing here? And us just demolishing them, just showing off basically for much of that game. And that set the tone really for the coming months, really, because from that point on we were just a joy to watch. We'd gone from a team which had been struggling for a number of years. We'd obviously had a much better second half of the previous season, but this was something different. This was stylish, this was entertaining. We had another player who was bought in the summer was Brad Maylett, who I loved the start of that season. I thought he was a quality player. The goals are flying in, the skills were fantastic, and suddenly we were, fighting it out at the top end of the league. And you're thinking, we've gone from being a team battling desperately to stay in this division to one that could actually go up.
Yeah, I think at that point I wasn't certain about promotion or anything like that, because obviously it'd been such a big turnaround. I don't think we had the biggest squad either, so I think it was just a case of, from my point of view anyway, just sort of enjoying the fact that we were trying to outscore teams really as much as anything else, because we'd always been quite a dour side, hadn't we? A side that was, good defensively, but there wasn't much flair going forward. We'd nick a 1-0. If we won 2-0, then it would be, a very good day really. So to get, as you say, to get those 4 goals in the first 2 games and then 3 in the next one, and we were like a free scoring side, and I didn't really mind the fact that we'd sacrificed a little bit defensively to do it either, because it was just refreshing, wasn't it, to see a Swansea side that was looking to, re-damage the opposition, because it had been such a long time really since we'd been like that, hadn't it? But I think by the end of September we were still towards the top, weren't we? I think it did sort of fade away, from there really. And I suppose a little bit like this season is probably a good example where we've had that flying start, and that sort of keeps you in the frame, even though we didn't carry it on maybe so well. But I suppose we should move on to the FA Cup as well, shouldn't we? Because that was such a memorable thing from that season. I mean, if you look at it started with the Ruston and Diamonds game, didn't it? And do you remember that Kieran Durkin goal? I mean, because we've got to talk about it, haven't we?
I don't actually remember it. What was which goal was that?
Oh, you've ruined my moment. We were 2-0 up at this point, so we're already going through. And Durkin gets the ball, and he's 60, 70 yards from goal, and he starts dribbling towards the goal, and Durkin would never dribble. So he's ran at goal, and we're all screaming at him, pass it to Trundle. And he gets to the edge of the box, and you're thinking, sure, he's got to give it now. And he chipped the keeper. So he did a 50-yard run and chipped the keeper. Now that was, like, if anybody does that, it's, a moment of genius. But this was Kieran Durkin. He was never, the most highly rated of players. So for him to do that was just, amazing, really. One of the strangest and most wonderful goals I think I've ever seen by a Swans player. So go on.
If anybody has that video anywhere, like Kieran Durkin's mum or something like that, then please get in touch with us, because
maybe the Swan portal has it.
Yeah, well, yeah. In the midst of all the kind of old clips, please find that goal. Please find it and share it, because
you've never seen it, have you?
I don't think I have. I have no memory of that goal. Absolutely none. I would remember that goal if I'd seen it. I mean, it's it's one of the frustrating things actually at the moment. Like all the Swans official account retweets like stuff, all memories from the past, etc. And they're all from kind of the Premier League years, maybe the Championship, etc. And I would like to see a few more obscure clips, like stuff from.
Do you know what they did earlier though? Right, I've got to interrupt you on this. Sorry. They posted a picture of us commiserating each other at full time of the Wembley '97 playoff final. Now I'm all for sharing memories, but what the hell are they doing sharing that one?
It's like, that's going to cheer everyone up in the middle of a pandemic, isn't it?
It's like there's certain things I don't want to see, and I can tell you right now that's one of them.
Next week, photos of Bayo's penalty flying over the bar against Barnsley to read.
And then the week after, Michael Chopra celebrating after scoring a last-minute winner for Cardiff.
Yeah, Southampton's goal to relegate us. Yeah, all the great moments in our history, all of them lined up there. Sometimes you're thinking, what? Anyway, that's something for a different day. You start this off on the FA Cup run. Obviously we've been doing well in the league, but that season is mainly known, I think, for the FA Cup run. So 3-0 against Ruston Diamonds, 2-1 against Stevenage, who were of course a non-league team back then. Third round, beat Macclesfield 2-1, and that set up a fourth round tie against Preston, who of course were, I think I'm right in saying, they were top of the championship at that stage. If they were
towards the top, weren't they?
If they weren't top, they were definitely among the tops there. They were really challenging strongly for promotion to the Premier League. So, we obviously didn't get a Premier League team because we never did get Premier League teams back then, but we got the next best thing in Preston. And it was a big occasion, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was. And you've always had this feeling, didn't you, at the Vetch? Or certainly I did anyway, that, if the crowd are up, we could make it quite intimidating, and you always fancy we might have a chance of getting the result. And I would have probably felt like that against most of the Prem teams as well, because the Vetch was cramped when the pitch was small, the crowd were close to the pitch, and we didn't half get behind the team when we wanted to. So I could imagine that a lot of players would not have liked that. Imagine being a left back in front of the North Bank, for example. Not something you'd relish, I'm sure. So we did always think we might have a chance, but obviously we went one down, didn't we, early in the second half, and you're thinking, well, if we get a replay here, we'd be quite happy with that. But then we had a a bit of a mad 5 minutes, didn't we? I know there is clips of this on YouTube somewhere, and they're always worth watching. But moment of inspiration, really, wasn't it, from our well, I'll say our two Scousers, but one of them's from Birkenhead. But I suppose they still are the two Scousers, aren't they?
Scouser. I mean, yeah, you know, that free kick from Robinson to begin with is trademark. You know, it was a sight actually that we got to see quite a lot over those seasons. It was amazing actually the amount of free kicks that we scored in that time.
Yeah, that was another thing, wasn't it? We never used to score free kicks, did we?
No,
and then we started scoring them for fun.
Every time we got a free kick just outside the box, you thought, you know what, we've got a really good chance of scoring from this. Between Robinson and Trundle, you know, you just thought, yeah, we've got a chance here. I'm just looking at this Preston team. There was some, you know, good names like Claude Davis, Graham Alexander. Both those went on to play Premier League, as did Dixon Atuhu, Eddie Lewis, American international, Paul McKenna, who was there for a long time, Ricardo Fuller, who's a very good striker, David Healy, of course, a brilliant international goal scorer, even if he didn't really do it at an international level. And here's one for you, Steve. Do you know who Preston's only substitute was that day? The only substitute to come onto the pitch?
No, you'll have to enlighten me on that one. I haven't got a clue.
Future Swan, Pavel Abbott.
Really? I didn't know he played for them, actually. I think it was from there he went to Huddersfield, but
Yeah.
no, that's interesting.
There you go. Who'd have thought a couple of years later he'd be frustrating us all after a ridiculous...
Yeah, well, at least we made him suffer a little bit at some point.
Yeah, exactly. His performances for us were just payback for knocking them out of the FA Cup. Robinson picking out the back of the net from a free kick, which is something, like you said, we did remarkably often at that time. And then, of course, the moment the cross goes in, headers won the air. I think James Thomas, I think it was.
Right. Yeah.
And then coming onto it is Lee Trundle. And like 99% of League Two strikers running onto that ball in the box in that position would have just stuck their head on it. But Trundle doesn't. Takes it down the chest and side foots it into the back of the net, sparking absolutely insane celebrations.
Yeah, just the type of celebrations you miss today, really, isn't it? Because be on that north bank and then you'd be piling all over each other, and then by the time you'd calm down again, you'd end up a few yards in a different place next to different people, and then because it was so rammed, you couldn't move back. But it was a special goal, really. I mean, I interviewed Brian Flynn in the fanzine a few years back, and I was talking to him about that game, and he was saying the same thing as you. Really, he was just thinking, "Oh, surely he's going to head it," but he said that was him. He said his chest control was so good. He just didn't get phased, did he, under pressure, really. He's in that position, and he was as cool as you'd like, knew exactly what he was going to do, and executed it brilliantly. And it's definitely one of those standout Vetch moments, I think, probably for anyone who's around our age group, especially because there weren't too many of them. But that was a great win, really, and that set us up then for the last 16, which, to be fair, for a League Two side to get that far is a pretty good achievement, isn't it?
Yeah, I just on that goal, just before we move on to Tranmere, I remember I was watching that game in the wing stand of the match, which, for those of you who don't remember, it was the bit, well, the centre stand, say, but the bit that was nearest to the east stand. And anybody who's ever sat there, it was kind of just like wooden benches. There were no backs to the seats. It's this classic Vetch, this is. I just remember when that goal went in, like feeling the whole stand just shake. It was vibrating at a ridiculous level. It's incredible that the stand didn't collapse, if I'm being honest. It just shook violently because of all the celebrations, because everybody was jumping up and down. The atmosphere that day was just unreal. It really was on another level. And it was, we didn't have many good FA Cup runs. We haven't really tended to in my whole time supporting the Swans, really. But that was a heck of a moment there, beating a team that was challenging for the Premier League, doing it convincingly as well, playing well in that game. I think we were first on Match of the Day that night. if I remember rightly. I think we may have been top of the agenda because I don't think any Premier League teams were knocked out. So I think we were the biggest upset that day. And yeah, through to the 5th round then, everybody hoping for, a big Premier League draw. We've been through all 4 rounds. We've beaten a team for the Championship. Come on, give us a big name. Let's send us to, Old Trafford or somewhere like that, anywhere. And we got sent to Tranmere, which wasn't really the kind of the golden ticket that we were hoping for. But I think the attitude was, okay, well, we're going to Tranmere. They're only a league above us. We've got a chance here of actually getting through to getting through to the next round. And, that would have been an incredible achievement for a team in League Two.
Yeah, I remember about that draw because it was around the spell where they just started putting the draw on a Monday, and it was really annoying because it was in school, so obviously you couldn't really watch it. But I remember the class next door to mine had it on, so basically I knew the teacher I had was a bit of a pushover, so I just got up and walked out and went into that class. And then just as I got in there, we got drawn out. So I think I was on the verge of a severe bollocking, and then luckily we were out, so we knew we had Tranmere, so just walked back in. But yeah, I think it was the type of draw where if we were at home, we'd have all been really pleased with it, wouldn't we? Because we'd be thinking again, oh yeah, no problem here. They won't want to come to us, and they're only 1 division above us. We'll have a good chance here. But to have it away was that little bit tougher. So yeah, that was a difficult one. I was at that game, the Tranmere one. To be fair, we played quite well. I think we were unlucky not to get something. Obviously, we've scored early on. Robinson, he always seemed to score at Tranmere. Obviously, that's where he's from, and he got released there, didn't he? So maybe he had that bit of a point to prove. Do you remember the Trundle masks? Because obviously he fractured his cheekbone, didn't he, in the Preston game?
Yeah.
So he had to wear one of them to play. So yeah, they've got an equaliser from what looked like a dodgy pen. And then in the second half, to be fair, Ian Humas scored a screamer. There wasn't a lot we could have done about that, but to be fair, we did push for that equaliser. And I remember we ended up with 10 men actually because Alan Tate was given a red card. I think it got rescinded in the end. The ref had a shocker that day. That's something that stands out to me. He was awful, I thought. And he definitely didn't help us. But it was frustrating to go out really because the other thing I remember is that Tranmere, I think, had Millwall next. And I think Millwall had Sunderland because it was the year that Millwall made the final. So we could have got to the final and not played a Prem team. Like on the way, I'm not saying that we could have done it or anything, but I mean, in one-off games, you just said we'd have had a chance against any of those sides, really. So it is, I wouldn't say it frustrates me all these years on, but you do wonder that, if we could have got past Tranmere, you never know. We could have given Millwall the game. So yeah, it's a funny one, really, isn't it? It would have been unbelievable if a team would have made the final by not having faced the Premier League side. I mean, I don't know if that's ever happened. I know Cardiff did it by only beating one Prem side, and I think that was Middlesbrough, and obviously they get jammy as they usually do. But yeah, certainly it was something that did us proud, and it probably again didn't do any harm for the publicity of the club and stuff like that. So just got people talking about us in a good light again. I remember Mark Lawrenson especially being really praising up Trundle because of how well he played in various games, and yeah, just added to what was a bit of a feel-good factor, really, didn't it, around the club at that time.
It was, and you make an important point there. The Swans were getting a lot of attention back then. We were making, Sky Sports News, Soccer AM absolutely loved us. A lot of it was down to Trundle, obviously, because he was just a superstar. And the thought that back then, you'd tune into Soccer AM every Saturday morning and you'd expect to see Lee Trundle featured on it. Now, when you were a League Two club, I mean, that was just nuts, really, if I'm being honest, looking back. Because, I mean, Soccer AM was such a massive show back then. Younger listeners may not realise what a phenomenon it was back around that era. And Trundle was just a fixture on the show. They absolutely adored him. And, the whole country knew who Lee Trundle was. And you think now, how many League Two players does everybody in the country know these days? I mean, none. It doesn't happen. But there was something about Trundle that was just special. People just, they just thought his personality, the way he played the game, it was just infectious. And he was a superstar, really, at that level. He was a bigger star. There probably has not been a bigger star at League Two level ever, if we're being honest. without being somebody who's fallen, from stardom into that division. And it just added to the excitement of watching the Swans around that era, because, like you said, there was nothing fashionable about supporting the Swans before that. But around about that time, it did become very cool to be a Swans fan. And, everybody suddenly was following the Swans, even people who wouldn't usually pay attention to us, or who were keeping an eye on our results now. Well, they knew about that Trundle fella who was, performing all the tricks and scoring the amazing goals. Suddenly, being a Swans fan was cool. It was incredibly enjoyable, and it was something that people actually followed. And you could see the attendances went up, interest went up, and that's something that again just started the buzz and started the ball rolling in terms of momentum over the coming years. It was a really crazy time actually to be supporting the Swans.
Yeah, it definitely was. It sort of felt like different, didn't it, compared to what we'd seen in the past. I mean, I know the league form wasn't as good as it had been, as I've already alluded to, really, but it just felt like, things were more positive. And obviously we had the news earlier in the season that, the go-ahead was there for the stadium for the start of the 2005-06 season as well. So I think there was that sort of excitement as well of being that there's not that long of the Vetch left, and obviously we're going to move to a new ground, and then it just sort of felt like there was a plan and there was some ambition here, I suppose, where, previously it was always going to be a bit of a hand-to-mouth existence, and like if we could get into League One and that would sort of be it. I'm not saying that at League Two level we were thinking, the success we were going to have further down that was going to be as successful as it was, but at the same time it did feel like we were a club that was on the up, really, and it had never really felt like that in my lifetime. So I think that was what was so encouraging, wasn't it?
It really was. And but one of the weird things about that season was that just a few weeks after that Tranmere defeat, where we'd done so well to reach the 5th round of the FA Cup, first time we'd done it in absolute years. Just after that, then we sacked Brian Flynn. He only had 2 more wins as Swansea manager, and suddenly this hero who'd saved us from relegation to non-league, who'd brought Trundle to the club, who'd brought this fantastic football that we'd all been enjoying, suddenly he was shown the door.
Yeah, he was. I was quite surprised. I can't deny that. And disappointed, really, because we'd seen good signs from Flynn. The football had gone downhill, and results had. There was no two ways about it. But I think I was taking the view more, but we weren't really expecting to go up. After the season that we'd had, it was always going to be, for me, more about trying to get towards the mid-table. Top half would be great, and then the following year we'd be looking to go up then, really. So yeah, I was disappointed because the players that had come in had been of a far better calibre than we'd seen for years. As we've already spoken about Trundle, and but then we've not really mentioned the fact that Leon Britton signed permanently, and so did Martinez, so did Lenny John Rose, and Tate came a little bit later then, didn't he? So you had it all in, and we were quite an inexperienced team as well when you think about it. I know the likes of Martinez were quite experienced, but a lot of the others, it was their first year of playing a full season of league football, and then even Trundle had only been playing for a couple of years, even though he was about 27, I think, at the time. So, there was a lot of inexperience out there, really. So I think, to have expected to go up would have been a little bit, over the top. But I think it did transpire. It's never completely come out, has it? But I think it was down to the fact that the manager didn't live here. So I got the feeling that is why, in the end, they decided to part company. I think it was a shame, though, because I think Flynn obviously played a key role in keeping us up, and I know everyone does say that Martinez really started the ball rolling here, but I think Flynn deserves a degree of credit because a lot of the good players that came in here and stayed for a long time and did really well were brought in by him, really. And football was along a similar line to Martinez. I don't know if you think similar.
Yeah, that Flynn was obviously, the style of football was very different to Martinez, but it was entertaining, and that was the key element. It was football that we all enjoyed watching. It was football played with a smile on the face, and it was ambitious, it was aspirational, and that's what Flynn brought to the team, and he did change the attitude around the club. perhaps he was a victim of his own success, because expectations did rise, and then the club probably did start thinking, okay, we want to go up through the divisions now, and looked at Flynn and the fact that he wasn't living locally, and probably thought the commitment wasn't there. I mean, we'll never know how Flynn would have done if he'd been given a bit more, given more time there. Perhaps, the trajectory was there to be seen, and he was losing his way slightly. Perhaps the following season he would have hit on a similar formula to the one that Jack had found. Who knows? But I was with you. I was surprised when it happened. I really wasn't ready for him to be sacked. Really, I wasn't expecting that at all. I was probably a bit angry because I did like Flynn, like all of us did. I enjoyed that season, even though the results had, we had been slipping down the table and results hadn't been as good. But, compared to what we'd been seeing in previous years, I mean, it was a world of difference. And it was a bit of a surprise one. And the decision initially didn't really look vindicated, because he brought in Kenny Jackett, who didn't really have much experience beyond being a coach at QPR and Ian Holloway. And he didn't get off to a good start in any way, shape or form. I mean, the form just deteriorated under him between him getting appointed and the end of the season. And for the rest of that season, people will look at Kenny Jackett and thinking, what on earth have we got here? And why on earth did we get rid of Brian Flynn to get this guy in?
Yeah, I didn't know much about Kenny Jackett at all, to be honest. So obviously I spoke to my father about him, and he said that he was, he played for Watford for all of his career, really. He'd also played for Wales, retired early, and then obviously he'd gone into coaching, I think, with Watford initially, and then obviously he was at QPR, wasn't he, when he came to us. It didn't strike me as being inspiring. I do have to admit that. It didn't seem great, and I think Kenny was a difficult man to sort of warm to as well in some ways, wasn't he? The way he treated a couple of individuals. I'm sure we're about to discuss one of them now, but the results did take a nosedive. I suppose in the grand scheme of things, it didn't matter that much, because the season was dead, wasn't it? We weren't going to make the playoffs, because I think Alan Curtis had had a few games in charge. We'd been okay, but I think we were at the point where we were getting close to must wins. They were not one, and then obviously you're done then, aren't you? So obviously I think we had one win on the jacket at the end of that season. I think the rest of them may have been defeats, other than a dreadful game with York on the final day, which ended 0-0. But obviously, I think that game is obviously more famous, isn't it? For it was the last game for, certainly up to that point, the greatest player we'd had in our lifetime, really, Roger Freestone, a player who deserved a better send off, really, than what he was given when he wasn't treated very well.
Yeah, it was an unceremonious departure, really, which, again, didn't do much to help Jackett's popularity among a fan base who were already questioning his appointment, really. You had the player that my first Swans hero. He was my first kind of Swans favourite. A player who'd been there for years and years and years, who'd been through so much with the Swans, a real character as well as an absolutely fantastic goalkeeper. And it was kind of so long goodbye, don't let the door hit you on the way out kind of thing. It was, I think a lot of people felt that there was a lack of respect, really, in the way that Roger was shown the door. I mean, we were talking off air earlier. I remember from the end of our season going to watch the game against Hull when we lost 3-2, and Roger was at fault for a few of those goals, and some really bad mistakes, the kind of mistakes that make you think, oh, do you know what, he's probably way past his best now, and we probably need to be looking for a bit better than Roger. As good as he had been, the writing was on the wall that actually he wasn't up to it anymore. Which, it's a shame, but it does happen, even to greats. So it was, from a footballing point of view, you can understand why he'd want an improvement, but it wasn't handled in a very classy way, and it wasn't really the kind of dignified exit that the fans felt Freestone deserved.
Well, no, I think, yeah, there's certainly a case that Roger wasn't the goalkeeper that he'd been previously. He was definitely on the way down. He may have been worth another year, but probably not as first choice. So, I mean, from a footballing point of view, I could understand the decision that maybe it was time for him to leave. But I think Jack had said he hadn't decided for sure before the York game. But the fact that then he did get released, even if that is true, it doesn't look very good, does it? Because at the end of the season game, surely like that one game wasn't going to massively influence anything. So the decision should have been made already, really. And if the decision was going to be from his point of view that Freestone was going to be leaving, then it really should have been, that day should have been about him. It should have been a case of, right, Roger, you're the captain, you're leaving. It's going to be your final game, but we're going to make a big fuss of you. The crowd are going to give you the send-off that you deserve. The record appearance holder. You've been, one of the best goalkeepers we've ever had. And it should have been, 90 minutes of showing appreciation for a club legend. But, we didn't really get that, did we? I know the crowd did give him a good ovation and everything like that, but because we didn't know for certain that he was going, we didn't, maybe go as far as we could have done because you don't want to, I suppose, go overboard and then he's still here. So, it was a difficult one and it definitely didn't help Jacket's cause the way that it happened. And then, I mean, do you remember later on that summer, there were rumours, weren't there, of him trying to get rid of Lee Trundle? I mean, that was rumoured, wasn't it? He's always denied it, but I mean, that would have been unthinkable, wouldn't it? I think if he'd done that, he would have had to have quit because that would have just been, the biggest own goal ever, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of a fan Jacket was of Trundle in those early days because I don't think Trundle really, shone in those first games under Jacket. I mean, nobody did. Jacket took a long time to get settled, and I mean, like I said, there were that summer there were big question marks, but you got to give Jacket credit. He worked a bit of magic in the transfer window, and that's not something we always said about Jacket in his time at the Swans. But he did bring in some important players that season. Gary Monk brought in Sam Ricketts from non-league. Brought in Gary to replace Freestone. So some players who made a big difference the following season by shoring up the defence.
Yeah, there's no two ways about that. I mean, defensively, we were weak. We were gifting so many goals. So we did have to, make changes in those positions. And obviously, as you say, goalkeeper was one where we needed to make one. Willie's come in. And then that's last year at the Vetch, he was pretty formidable, for being honest. I mean, his penalty saving was legendary, wasn't it? So he did well. I mean, Ricketts would end up with a Welsh cap, wouldn't he, by the midway point of the season? And, again, he did really well. He was a revelation, really, wasn't he? Kev Austin was, solid as a rock, as the song goes. And obviously, he was a more experienced player, wasn't he? He played for a few clubs. He'd come from Bristol Rovers, so he was a tough cookie to say the least, wasn't he, Kev Austin? You certainly could not take him for a mug, and he was a real asset for us. And then when you're looking at the other players that came in, Andy Gurney, he's put a name that brings a smile to my face. And then I suppose Adrian Forbes was the other key one, and he would, as we'll get on to later, he played a big part, didn't he? So, but I mean, at the start of that next season, we didn't start great, though, did we? And I remember there were some voices, against Jacket, weren't there? And he could have been under a little bit of pressure, couldn't he?
Yeah, I remember going to the opening game against Northampton and leaving that match thinking, I don't hold up too much hope for this team. And I think that was the general attitude, really. I think after the shocking end to the previous season and then starting off with a defeat and then I think it culminated in that League Cup match against QPR where fans really turned on Jacket, really weren't happy with what they'd seen. We lost 3-0, and it was there was a lot of anger there, and you could have there is a possibility that at that stage he was under pressure. I think he'd won one game earlier or so far that season before that League Cup match, and the football wasn't very good. It wasn't good to watch. The results weren't good. It didn't look like much was going right, if we're being honest. But that did seem to be a bit of a turning point for Jacket, and slowly it just started to change, and we started just getting the odd 1-0 here and there. I remember a game against Kidderminster a few weeks later then where we actually looked comfortable, and it looked a bit more like the Swansea that we'd seen the previous season under Flynn, where the goals were going in and it was a bit more dominant. And just gradually we showed up. We weren't conceding many goals. We were getting wins regularly, and just very, very quietly we started climbing up the table and started getting back up towards the top end again.
Yeah, we did. I mean, as you say, we weren't leaking so many goals, were we? I think, like I mentioned, the Kidderminster game you mentioned there, I think that was a 3-0, wasn't it? So we won there. I remember we won at Wickham 1-0. I think we beat Mansfield on a Friday then in October time, and that put us top. And again, that was with a very late winner, I think, to win 1-0. So I think that was the big difference for us. We certainly weren't as free scoring. We weren't as good to watch as we had been. I mean, Trundle had not been, again, the tricks probably hadn't come out as much as they had done the year before, but we were getting the job done, and we were certainly harder to beat, which I suppose is what we needed to be, because that was a big thing for us. And another thing we should probably talk about actually was one very good thing Jacket did was moving Christian O'Leary into midfield, and that was a bit of a revelation, if we're being honest. I mean, because at centre half he'd always been suspect, and he'd always I certainly would have my hands in front of my eyes on numerous occasions when he was playing centre back. But when he was moved into midfield, he just seemed to be able to take the game by the scruff of the neck a bit, and he just gave us that bit of doggedness that sometimes we needed, I felt.
Yeah, and that kind of summed up the season really, because it was a gritty team. As we had some good players, we had some players that you enjoyed watching, but it was really a very kind of solid, robust team. Plenty of red cards. I think our disciplinary record that season was among the worst in the division. We weren't a nice team to play against. There's no doubt about that. And I guess having Christian O'Leary in midfield really kind of establishes that, doesn't it? But it was a transformation. We turned into a team that you'd have to be really, really good to beat. That wouldn't really give you much of a chance. We had a solid, hard-working midfield. We had a defence which was up there with the best in the division, and we had a goalkeeper who was absolutely phenomenal that season in Gary. I mean, we spoke about Freestone's departure being very unpopular, but his replacement was absolutely top draw. He was probably the best keeper in the division that season. And it's to think, the previous season we managed to lose to a team with 8 men against Southend United.
I can't believe we didn't discuss that properly.
It's quite the transformation, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah, well, that 8-men game, well, I don't really know what to say about that. But yeah, it certainly was a transformation. And things that we needed to do, as I've said, really, because I mean, as much as I did love the we'll score more than you, it won't work every week. I mean, it didn't work for Kevin Keegan, did it? For example, in the end, it backfired, and Newcastle didn't win the league. So you've got it's a balance, isn't it? There's times where you can really go at teams and give them a bit of a pasting, but there's other times where you have to be a bit more clever and subdued, and you've got to try and grind out results. And under Flynn, we couldn't do that. Let's be honest about it. But we certainly then could do it under Jacket. And by early in the new year, really, we have to say we were looking a very good bet for promotion. But remember, then we did go on a bit of a bad run, which is typical Swans, because the easy way just isn't in our DNA, is it?
No, definitely not. I mean, but like you said, I mean, we set ourselves up well in the around about winter time. I remember one nighttime match against Notts County, we won 4-0 really, really easily. It seemed like we were in a really good place, and that's what Jacket did give us, was that kind of winning mentality where we just could grind out results. We didn't get many draws that season, if I remember rightly. It was, mainly it was just wins. And it got us up there into a dangerous position. Yeah, the form did tail off a little bit in the new year. Probably, got us drifting down the table meant that we were playing a little bit of catch up towards the end of the season. But I mean, when you're talking about kind of finales to the season, there were two things really. We were chasing promotion to the football league, to League One, but obviously we were also preparing for a big send off for the Vetch. The Liberty was going up rapidly, and we were preparing to say goodbye to our home of nearly 100 years. And the two things came together quite spectacularly, really, and there was a lot of excitement around that at that time because, I mean, there would have been excitement anyway because we were leaving the Vetch and people wanted to be there for those final matches. But the fact that we were also chasing promotion just added that extra dimension to those games, and you went there really, really buzzing, and there was a real feeling that we were building up to something which would feel quite special at the end of the season.
Yeah, you're certainly right. I mean, we had that wobble. I mean, February, March time. I think we only had one win in 9 or something. I remember it got to Easter, and I was thinking to myself, right, well, if we're serious about going up here, we have to turn the tide, really. And I think we beat Macclesfield on Good Friday. Then on Easter Monday, we went to Cheltenham, and we won there, and you just felt, right, we're back in this now. And I remember then the run we had was pretty good. We did lose a couple of games. Famously, we lost at Lincoln to a Gary Monk own goal where he sliced it and it went in. I remember going to that game and I was in disbelief on the way home that we'd lost like that. And then there was a day at Bristol Rovers which wasn't good. I remember they beat us 2-0. If you remember earlier in the season, we had a bit of a dodgy pen against them, didn't we? Quite late on, and Trundle's taken it. The keeper has saved it, but it was a judge that he'd jumped off his line to save it. So obviously the keeper's ordered a retake, and the retake has been scored. We've all gone bonkers. And Ian Atkins, who was their manager, he already had a grudge against us because there was a similar incident with Oxford a couple of years before. But of course, it's stuff like that isn't okay, but it's perfectly fine to move a ball in the very last minute of a playoff final to get a better angle on a free kick and then to score and never say another word about it. But, some people are like that, aren't they? But, so they turned us over. And then we went into the last game at the Vetch then, didn't we? And I think we were about 3 points off the top three, because obviously the top three go up. And it was a case of, that we're going to have to now win these last two games. And there was a lot of pressure on it, really. Obviously, it was going to be that with the fact that we were leaving the Vetch. So there was a little bit of pressure of that as well. Because whenever you leave a ground, isn't it? You don't want to leave on like a sour note. I mean, we were talking off air, weren't we, about
you don't want to do a Cardiff, do you? You don't want to do a Cardiff. You
don't want to lose 3-0 in the last game and then thinking you've got a playoff game. And then obviously because you cocked up so badly, you don't even get that either.
Yeah, that's that. You don't want to do a Cardiff. You don't want to do a Cardiff. You don't want to have that lifetime of regret that you left your old ground on such terrible terms. I mean that was long before Cardiff messed up their Ninian Park goodbye. But it was a hell of a day, that Shrewsbury match. There was a big fanfare before the match. You had the ex-players out. One thing I remember so clearly about that day was that people had been asked to turn up wearing white. And fair play, the entire crowd, I think, turned up wearing white. And it was just a scene to behold. It was a stunning day. And just the stands and terraces were just reflective. It was so white, and it just looked absolutely perfect. And we had, a lot of pre-match entertainment and events, etc. And then, of course, it was meant to be this big celebration, but I think everybody was well aware. It was going to feel a bit rubbish if we didn't get the win, because obviously if we didn't get the win, we were probably coming back then for a playoff match, which would have made the whole thing look a little bit silly, really, that we made such a massive deal for this one match when we could have been playing another match. But it was a tense match, but I guess typical of the kind of Jacket era. It was just that kind of stubbornness and that kind of gritted out, and a man who would who would write himself into Swansea City's history books over the coming weeks, popped up with a winner.
Yeah, he did. It was very early, wasn't it, the winner? It was in the first 10 minutes or so. But I remember Forbes getting the ball, and the goalkeeper was Joe Hart, of course, in one of his first professional games. He was in a bit of a strange position, and then Forbes moved himself to the right a bit to give himself a better angle because Hart was out of the goal, and obviously he scored with relative ease. There is a great picture, isn't there, I think, of Forbes, running and jumping in front of the North Bank. I suppose it's one of the iconic Swansea City photos, really, isn't it? And I think after that, it certainly wasn't the classic game, and certainly towards the end, you could sort of feel the nerves of, that we need this win, don't we? We've got to hang on, and then obviously we did. Big pitch invasion, as there always was at the Vetch for the last game, that set us up then for one of the craziest away days there'll ever be, really. Nice little trip to Bury. I still can't believe you weren't there, as you were telling me before.
No, I wasn't there. Those are the days before I was going on away trips. But one thing about that Shrewsbury game, I remember the stewards were kind of frantically, after the pitch invasion, were kind of frantically trying to keep fans away from the goals, to stop them from stealing stuff, stop them from digging up the pitch, because obviously we were still likely at that stage to be having a playoff match there. So
they'll say that, but we also had the FAW final, didn't we?
We did. But people didn't care as much about that. The playoff.
Yeah, but we still needed goals, though, didn't we, and everything like that.
Yeah. So they were kind of frantically trying to keep people from digging up the pitch, keep people from taking down the goals and the nets and stuff. All people want the mementos. People taking advertising hoardings and stuff. And you think, leave everything where it is. You never know. We could need this in the next few weeks. But yeah, it's weird looking back, isn't it, that we had a pitch invasion at that point when there was still a huge game left to play, which would decide whether we went up or have to go through the playoffs. Looking back, that pitch invasion could have looked seriously premature. I know it was just what we did at the Vetch, but
I don't think it mattered really. I don't think there was, even if we weren't leaving, there was just always a pitch invasion for the last home game. Yeah. Just the way that it was, and it so happened that I suppose it looks like a celebration, but I don't think it really was. I think it was just people wanted to go on, and obviously because it was the last year then, there was only going to be one, maximum 2 more games there that people just wanted to go on, didn't they? Because they knew they weren't going to get many more chances.
I remember I was in it would have been the West Terrace for that game. One of the only times I watched a game from the West Terrace, and I just remember in the final minutes of the game, me and my cousin just pushing our way through the crowd to the front, because we were thinking there's going to be a pitch invasion and we want to be at the front, So we got to the front, and then I think we were pretty much at the front then when the final whistle went, so we could hop over pretty easily. We were on the pitch pretty quickly for the end of that match. But it was a great occasion, and it was a fantastic send off for the old ground. The fact that we won definitely helped, but as we said, there was still plenty to play for. We still had to go up to Bury, and 5,000 Swansea fans did. It is one of the legendary away games. I was that was before I was going to away games, so I did not get to go to Bury. I missed out. Actually, this is going to sound really sad. I was actually preparing for my drama GCSE at that time. So I was actually in a drama practice when that game was on. I had no idea what was going on. I was just nervously. That was, my phone wasn't good enough to check scores. Didn't have any kind of radio or anything there, nothing like that. I remember coming out then about 5 o'clock and seeing my mum had come to pick me up, and my brother was with her, and he came running out of the car saying the Swans were up. So that's my memory of the day. But obviously, it was a stressful afternoon for anybody who was actually at Gig Lane that afternoon.
Yeah, it was. Like I said, I was one of the 5,000. A mad day, really, because I remember getting in the ground and you're looking round, and I was on the side of the pitch. I think that's where the majority were. but then we were also given what was the normal away end of behind the goal. I mean, it got to like just before kick-off or whatever. You're looking at things, so like, this is literally mad. We've got twice as many fans in here as them, and it's 200 odd miles from home. And you just look and think to yourself, it's surreal. You just don't see it every day, innit?
I genuinely don't know if I've like seen another example of something like that where the whole.
I think Portsmouth have done it once. They went to Notts County, and again they did win promotion there. This was when 5 years ago, maybe they were in League Two or something, and they did a similar type of thing. They had vast support, but obviously it just doesn't happen very often, does it?
I mean, we saw like last season when Leeds were thinking that they were going to go up automatically. Leeds fans were trying to buy loads of tickets in the Ipswich end, and like the revulsion at what was going on was so strong. Like that, any Ipswich fan who sold his ticket to a Leeds fan would have been absolutely battered, I think, because it's just not seen as it's just seen as like such a horrible idea that you would surrender your home advantage to the away fans like that. But Berry obviously thought, well, if 5,000 Swansea fans want to come up here, want to buy tickets, then great. That's going to make it our record attendance for the season, and it's going to.
We were lucky really that we were playing them, weren't we? Because I mean, a lot of other, like we had Bristol Rovers, as I've said the game before. We were given 1,000 tickets.
Yeah, they would have tapped out 1,000 tickets, and
they were like, you're not having any more. Yeah. So, and obviously we wanted more.
Police would have put foot down with a lot of grounds and just said, no, we're not letting away fans just buy up the whole home end. That's going to be too much of a logistical issue. But Berry, they
wanted the money, didn't they?
They were quite a friendly club. They wanted the money. There was no chance of any kind of trouble apart from a goalkeeper causing some maybe. We'll get to that in a bit. So yeah, but it's just one of those things that you do not see in football, but happened that day, and it's a very, very rare phenomenon. We don't see it very often at all, but it really did add to the occasion on that day.
Well, I remember one chant before kick-off was, "Are we sitting in your seats?" Because obviously the stand I was in was a Berry end in general, and a lot of their fans, I think, were a bit put out that they'd had to move. But as you say, they wanted the money, and from our point of view, it was great, really, wasn't it? Because it meant everyone that wanted to go could go, and Berry's a reasonable away end anyway. I think it did hold about 2,500, but to be able to double that is, marvellous, isn't it? So, I remember obviously we were all quite nervous before the game because, a win wouldn't have necessarily put us up. I remember we needed Southend to not win, or we then needed Scunthorpe to lose. I think Scunthorpe were away at Shrewsbury, and I think Southend were away at Grimsby. So, obviously the game's kicked off. There was a long ball forward. Adrian Forbes has run onto it, and he's controlled it really well. And the next thing you know, he stuck it in the net, and everyone's going absolutely bonkers. There's people on the pitch, and then you're looking at the clock. You're thinking, "Oh, okay, there's 89 minutes left now." You're just dreading the next however long because you knew that type of team was. Well, we were not the team that was going to massively go for it probably at that stage, and it was a tough watch. I can't deny. I remember the atmosphere being brilliant, obviously, but there was a nervous tension in the air. It can't be denied. I mean, it is horrible when you're hanging on, really. I remember at one point people were trying to get on the pitch, and for some reason Jacket had subbed Trundle, and you're just thinking to yourself, well, not being funny, but if we need another goal at some point, you just subbed our main goal getter here. And Jacket sent him over to the fans and said, look, try to tell them to stay off. They'll listen to you, kind of thing, which is probably true. They would listen to Trundle more than him, but everyone did stay off. I mean, I think Berry, they sort of wanted an equaliser, but I don't think they were ever massively going for it. And obviously it got to full time, and after what felt like an absolute eternity. And I think Southend won, so third place was ours, and then we saw what is, in my view, the greatest pitch invasion ever by an away team, where from two sides of the crowd just pile on. My mate's dad tried to get down the tunnel to get in the changing room to celebrate with the players, I think, and then I think Berry wanted us all gone from the pitch, I think, from what I remember, but I think they realised that there was absolutely no chance of that unless the players came out. So they all came out into the director's box, they're all celebrating, and next thing I remember really is the goalkeeper Willie Gray getting taken away by police, and remember then everyone was livid, and you just felt that could really kick off because I think there was a group of fans charging forward. They wanted to get at the police, and you're just thinking, we just want promotion. Goalkeepers getting arrested. You're just thinking, how's this happening?
Could you actually see clearly from the pitch what was going on with Gary? Could you
saw him getting taken away? Yeah.
Could you see why he'd been arrested? Could you see the kind of the what had gone on before he was arrested?
Not really. I mean, they're all like standing in a director's box. I remember a copper was in front of him, and next thing you know, he's getting taken away. I mean, obviously, you're not just looking at Gray. We're looking at all the different players. So, I suppose when he's getting taken away, how many people had actually seen the altercation? Whereas, I think a copper shoved him and he shoved him back, is what actually happened, and it all meant to have. But we just saw him getting taken away, and you're just thinking, this is bonkers. Goalkeeper getting, it's a joyous moment winning promotion. It doesn't happen very often, does it? You're all celebrating, and the goalkeeper's going down the cells.
I mean, like the club's changed a lot since those days, and we've said before, I think the fan base has changed a lot since then. And if you want the kind of example of how mental our fans were back then, I mean, that day just sums it up. You had 5,000 going up to Bury when we weren't actually favourites for promotion. It was likely before kickoff that we were going to be unsuccessful in getting promotion automatically. Then, of course, we score within 25 seconds and we have a pitch invasion as if it's a last-minute winner. Never mind that we were still relying on results elsewhere. And then at the end of the match, you have that enormous pitch invasion as an away team. And to top it all off, our goalkeeper gets arrested. Has there ever been an example of a player getting arrested as he's celebrating promotion? I don't know if I've heard of anything like that. It was just, it's the stuff, I hate the word, but it's banter stuff, isn't it? It's just, it's laughable looking back. But I guess it sums up what an absolutely crazy but amazingly fun time that was.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the fact is it's memorable now, and it sort of adds to the story, doesn't it? So, you don't want to be one of these football clubs where you win promotion and everyone shakes hands, get a pat on the back, jolly good show, old chap, and all that crap. I mean, this not being funny, but if you get a promotion, you should be going mental. Like this, a pitch invasion for me is like a given. Like surely that should be the case. People should be going mad because it is a moment of real joy, isn't it? And it doesn't happen every day, and that's what we're all in it for, those moments. I remember Martinez, for some reason, when he was manager, I think his phrase was controlled celebration about if and when we go up to the championship, and I was thinking, will you shut up? That's not us. If you know what I mean. Like, you can be, you're this brilliant manager, you're doing everything right, but when it comes to actually the behaviour of fans and being calm and this kind of thing, shut up, because literally that's not what we want at this club. If we get a success, we want to go mad. And that's the way it's all it should be.
And we want an arrest from a player. I mean, Bury is just one of those days that's, it's one of the things that's actually disappointing about Bury going out of existence now. Obviously, a football club going out of existence is always tragic. But I mean, the fact that Bury and Gig Lane has played a big part in Swansea's recent history, it's a shame that they are no longer with us, really, because I agree. That was a special day. I mean, I wasn't even there, but I know how special it was. Just looking back at the footage, you see, and there is a criminally low amount of footage around for that match. If somebody can find, extended footage of it, that would be great. But it's just, you see the photos of the day of just Swan shirts all over the ground, etc. It's just mad, and it sums up really the madness that was that time. Because I mean, that looking back at that era, those final years at the Vetch, and I guess the years that followed as well, I mean, there were years of great footballing success for the Swans. They kicked off this golden era, but they were also just fun times. They were times when it was so enjoyable to support the Swans. I mean, we had players that you could not help but like. You had this mixture of kind of just clowns and comics and some pretty thuggish characters like hard men as well, in their midst. There was an amazing balance to that squad, and I think every single player who was at the club at that time looks back at it and says, it was among, if not the best years of their career, definitely the most fun times of their career. And we look back at so many of those players with such fond memories because they just contributed so much, not just on the pitch but off the pitch. There are some stories from that time, obviously, but it was a fun club to support back then. There's no doubt about it, and it was the start of something special.
Yeah, it definitely was, wasn't it? It was just a likable group. I mean, don't get me wrong, they'd give you a few heart attacks if you were a manager, and there's occasions where they'd let you down. I mean, if you remember that season, we haven't really discussed it, the Shrewsbury away game where Monk got sent off, and then Andy Robinson got sent off, and then we're 1-0 down at half time, and we're 2 men down, and you're just looking at each other. This is another game I was at. I was looking at my dad and a mate of mine, and we're just like, we're screwed here. We've got absolutely no chance of coming back. And I suppose that's a good example, really, of sometimes we get it wrong, but it was they were really enjoyable times, weren't they? I mean, and then we did cap it off, didn't we, by of course winning the FAW Cup as well. So there was that that little bit of silverware. And you think the FAW Cup was always something that we'd struggled with. We'd only made a couple of finals before that, and it was ridiculous, really, that I think the competition had been going 7-8 years at that point, and we hadn't got our hands in it. So that was nice as well, wasn't it, to get our hands in it and to get something to end the Vetch on. And for Andy Robinson, obviously a player that missed the run-in because of his red card at Bristol Rovers, he then became the player to score the last goal of the Vetch as well, didn't he?
Yeah, and it great time. I think Wrexham were in League One at that point, but I think they'd been
they were going down and we were going up.
Yeah, so we were swapping places. But did they have Manu Garte up front?
They did, because he scored.
Yeah, because he was their great shining light that season up front as well. So it wasn't a given that we were going to beat Wrexham. But yeah, it was just that one final match. It wasn't the big occasion. I know it was a final, but it wasn't a big occasion. The Shrewsbury was. There wasn't a big fanfare beforehand, but it was just that one last goodbye for the old ground, and that's when people really did have free reign to go around and trash the stadium and take home any kind of mementos. We've still got a little patch of grass in my parents' house in the front garden, which is from the Vetch. It's still the greenest part of the lawn. The rest of the lawn is a bit of a mess, really, but that's a lovely bright green colour in that corner, where you can still tell that's the Vetch grass. I think we may still have like a piece of an advertising hoarding or something like that. I think we did bring a seat back with us as well. So yeah, there's there are a few little bits and bobs like that in my parents' house. I think still not give out. I don't know if Steve, you had any kind of souvenirs from the Vetch.
I went to get my old seat from the stand, so that's in the shed. I did get some turf as well, so yeah, I did get a couple of things. It's always nice just to have those couple of things. I know it's just a little bit of grass in there at the end of the day, but it's the hallowed turf, isn't it, of the great place, the place I suppose we'll never forget, and I'm sure it'll be the same for some of the guys listening. I mean, it's be 15 years coming up now since we left the Vetch, but I think a piece of all our hearts is definitely still there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good. It's good timing actually. This pod, because we are nearing the 15th anniversary of that Shrewsbury match, which was like we've been saying, a special day, and it was, I think looking back now, I think I appreciate the Vetch more now than I did back then. I mean, at the time, I think there was, there's obviously disappointment when you're leaving a stadium, you're leaving a place which has a lot of memories. But we were moving into a shiny new stadium. There was a real excitement, a buzz about that. A lot of clubs, West Ham in recent years, really not that excited about leaving their own ground and moving into a new stadium. I don't think that was the case for the Swans. I think there was a realization that the Vetch was totally unsuitable for a professional football club. I mean, it was so outdated. It was so ramshackled. The toilets alone should have seen that place closed down, really.
The toilets.
Honestly, the Vetch toilets should have been taken down brick by brick and re-erected in St. Fagans. They should, because they are just a piece of footballing history, not just Swansea footballing history, not just Welsh, not just British, but just world footballing history. Those toilets, they were something to behold. Anybody who's been there will know exactly what we're talking about.
The only thing I will say is they were not the worst. I don't know if you agree with that, but I can tell you right now, they definitely weren't the worst.
I'm not sure if I do agree with that. Where do you...
Okay, I will tell you, the Vetch ones, they were very, very bad, but they did have a roof. Can you imagine having a shit and getting soaked?
but in fairness, you with the Vetch toilets, you got soaked anyway because they were basically like the centre stand.
At least your head didn't get soaked.
Your head didn't get soaked, but your feet did. I mean, like it was.
Yeah, but at Shrewsbury and Chesterfield, these are the two grounds I'm talking about. Like you would have had that issue as well because basically the toilets were just a wall, like they were at the Vetch essentially. But also, like I said, there was no roof. So for me, the Vetch ones are not quite the worst.
Was Brentford like that as well?
Brentford.
Possibly
when it was at the other end. It might have been.
I have some memory that somebody correct me if I'm wrong here, but I have some memory of the toilets for the
Union Park used to be as well. Not the last time I went there, which is just before they shut. There was a roof on it, but the Grange end did not have roof on the toilets either.
Yeah. Well, one of the ends in Indian Park didn't have a roof. Full stop.
Yeah, that was the end.
Yeah. So, yeah, there is something about just those old gritty, horrible grounds, and you didn't get any grittier than the Vetch. It was just there's a story in every corner, wasn't there? It was just a mishmash of different stands and terraces which have been put there over the years. I mean, the story about the East Stand and why it only went halfway across the pitch, itself. It's just. It was a ground that just oozed character. There was nothing classy about it. There was nothing polished about it. It was, if you were a visiting fan, you probably thought, what is this dump? It was probably one of the ugliest grounds in the league, if we're being honest. But it was there was just something special about it. And there aren't any grounds like that left anymore, if we're being honest. They've all been demolished, pretty much. Grounds of that size with those kind of horrendous characteristics, in football's lust for gentrification, they've scrapped these brilliant buildings with long histories, and there is an element of seriousness in the fact that part of the Vetch should have been kept for museums. Like the North Bank was something special. The fact that that's no longer with us and that we can't show future generations of football fans what a proper terrace used to be like is a shame, because they will have nothing but photos to look back at it. So there is real disappointment, especially now that pretty much every team has a shiny new stadium. It's a shame that somewhere like the Vetch, that there's no memory left of that place other than photos and film footage. But it's nice that we were able to give it the send-off it deserved.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look back as well, I mean, you're a similar age to me. I mean, I'd like to think if I lived to what is an average age of what most people live to, then, there won't be that many people, in 40, 50 years' time that, will have gone to the Vetch. We could be part of like that last generation that still would have been to two grounds. So I do feel quite lucky, really, that I did have that opportunity, because it wasn't just for a couple of games either. I mean, I must have seen, arguably 200 games at the Vetch, certainly well over 150, I would say. So, I do feel quite lucky that we had that, and it's something that we can appreciate. And also, really, because the football was crap and then became good, that gives you that appreciation as well. Then of when the success did come later on, you've suffered to a point, and then you appreciate it so much more because of it.
Yeah, and what you say there about kind of, there'll come a time when those of us who are at the Vetch, long way down the line, but we will be in a minority. My sister is 18 years old, and she never got to see a match at the Vetch. We did take a couple of days before that Shrewsbury match. Me and my brother did something for TV there. just saying kind of how much we were looking forward to the game, etc. And we got to go around the Vetch into every single corner, every nook and cranny of the stadium, basically. So she, as a 3-year-old, was dragged around with us. So she can always say that she's been to the Vetch, but she never saw a game there, and she has no recollection of it. And you're thinking, well, yeah, an 18-year-old now who's old enough to drink has no memory of the Vetch. And anybody younger than that is going to have no memory of the Vetch. And you'd probably have to be around at least in your 20s now to have any kind of decent memory of what that stadium was like. So yeah, we were fortunate really that we've grown up watching football at a time when the sport's been at a kind of a bridge between the old and the new, and grounds like the Vetch have slowly disappeared over the years, and they've been replaced with stadiums like the Liberty, and football's been gentrified. It's got a lot more kind of sophisticated, I guess, and more well-behaved. And grounds like the Vetch also attract a certain kind of fan and a certain kind of culture. And that culture is going, and it's probably for the best, really, that lots of aspects of that culture are going, but there are also a lot of good things about it. And for me personally, I mean, that's where 3 generations of my family before me, my great-grandfather watched football at the Vetch, my grandfather watched football at the Vetch, my parents watched football at the Vetch. It is a place that has a lot of history for people's families as well, not just as individuals. So yeah, and that's why actually going through old memories like we have in this episode, especially the really happy ones from those final years, puts a smile on my face. And that's how I always remember the Vetch, actually, is how it was in those final 2 seasons, more than anything else, because we did have so many happy memories in those final 2 seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I suppose, but we all try and remember the good times. There were some times that weren't as good there. There's no two ways about it. But there was certainly a lot of good times, and like I say, really, it's football is different now, isn't it? You couldn't. The Vetch, as we said, was quite intimidating. You don't really get that intimidation factor anywhere else now. I mean, I'm not saying I want to be on the wrong end of that, but it's certainly great when you had that. It would give you that maybe extra 2% that you felt you could get a result or anything like that. And just the terracing and all that type of thing. That's what was so good about going to Brentford the last couple of years. Just to remember what that was like, and there's a certain edginess that I certainly miss, and I suppose a homely feel about the Vetch as well. There was something nice, wasn't there, about you could turn up, I suppose, not so much from my point of view because it was always there, but suddenly you were a player in senior league or you work shifts and you didn't know if you could go. Then last minute you found out you could go that day, and then you knew where your mates were and you could just go and stand by them. Whereas now it's all the hassle of can I get a seat next to them and all this kind of thing. And it's not as easy anymore, is it, for the floating fan as such? And I think that was something that was quite nice about it, really. That you could always go and stand by your mates, kind of thing. And that's something that's missing, I feel, now from football today.
Yeah, it is. But well, thank you so much for joining us on this pod. I don't know about you, Steve, but I've had a great time thinking back to those great years, the final years of the Vetch. Join us for our next pod, whenever that may be, when we will be looking ahead to our current home, the big move to the Liberty, and the effect that had, really spurring on the success and kicking us on to bigger and better things yet. So yeah, until then, thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully we'll be back soon. Thank you very much. Bye.